The Beasts went to battle and, for just about half an hour, the Bears were winning, in front of a record crowd to boot. We've got the story of an incredible day of rugby league in Coventry. This is the world's greatest podcast about the Coventry Bears. This is Bear Necessities. Welcome to Bear Necessities, your podcast all about the Coventry Bears. We live at covbearspodcast.com. We're at covbearspodcast on Twitter. You can subscribe in Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Stitcher, plenty of other places, and we're sponsored by the Bears Vice Presidents and by York's Tim. I'm one of your hosts, Dave Musson. Joining me as always is my dummy half, former Bears player Craig Cathcart. Craig, how are you doing? You come down from the high of Saturday yet?
Yeah, I'm still buzzing from Saturday actually. Probably still slightly hungover as well. Drinking in the sun all day probably didn't help, but it was a brilliant day, really enjoyable, and absolutely loved it. Really great to see that many people in Coventry enjoying rugby league.
Certainly was. So coming up on this week's show, obviously we'll reflect on a terrific day in the sunshine on Saturday at the Butts Park Arena. And we've got a whole host of people to help us do that. So during this episode, you're going to hear from a very proud Bears CEO, Alan Robinson, a very impressed BBC Sport correspondent, Dave Woods, as well as interviews with both of Saturday's head coaches. But first, let's quickly round up exactly what happened during the day. So first up, as long-time listeners will know, first it was a Tag Rugby showcase on the pitch, and then the craft beer bar and the food truck opened along with the main arena gates, and then we had live music courtesy of my band Wave. We had the awesome Chrissy Ducks and the amazing Brains for Breakfast. All that was going on while the Bears juniors had a run around on the pitch, and then we had the game itself, which ended 62-12 to the Bulls, but warrants far more discussion than that, which we will get to in a minute, of course. And then after the game, we were treated to more live music from the brilliant Alex Norman. So in short, it was an incredible day, topped off with a crowd, an official attendance of 1,465, which is a club record attendance for the second time this year. As for game itself, the Bears started brilliantly. They took the lead through Cam Pearce-Paul after around 5 minutes, and that was converted by Benstead. Bulls did hit back with a try after about a quarter of an hour, but they missed the conversion, which meant the Bears were in the lead, and they held on to that lead until just before the half-hour mark when the Bulls crossed again. And unfortunately, Bulls scored another one about 5 minutes before the break to make the half-time score 16-6 to the visitors. And the real damage in terms of the outcome of the match was done in the first 10 minutes of the second half. The Bulls bagged 3 tries in quick succession to just really seal the win. However, the Bears didn't let it get them down. They hit back again with half an hour to play. Benstead, he sort of dropped a fantastic sidestep to break the line and then popped a ball to Chris Barrett, who scored, made the score 32-12, only for Bradford to score again shortly after. Not long after that, the returning Kear and Sherratt, who I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit because he had a brilliant game. He thought he'd scored, but he was deemed to have stepped over the dead ball line when he touched down. And as was perhaps expected, especially given the heat and the effort put into the first half, Bradford's full-time fitness told in the last 10 minutes, and they added 4 more tries to give a somewhat unfair and lopsided look to the final score, making it that final score of 62-12. So Craig and I will talk about the game and the day as a whole in a minute, but first let's hear from both coaches. We've got Bradford's John Kear, who's going to be joining us in a moment, but not before we hear from Bears head coach Tom Tsang. So Tom, the scoreline was probably one that a lot of people might have expected, but yet again we had the same conversations. It definitely doesn't tell the story of that game. You must be incredibly proud of the shift your players put in, particularly that first half.
Yeah, that first 40 minutes is probably as good as we've played all season for a continued stretch of a game. I would say they scored their tries in 3 10-minute periods. So from 20 minutes to 30 minutes, they scored 3 tries. The first 10 minutes of the second half, they scored 3 tries, and the last 10 minutes of the second half, they scored 3 tries. So that's 9 tries in half an hour. The rest of the time, for me, you couldn't tell the difference between the two teams. We were very, very competitive. We were very, very enthusiastic. We were urgent. We were aggressive in defence, and we created some really good opportunities for ourselves, and we obviously managed to score a couple of them. So, yeah, I'm proud of the lads. I'm proud that they managed to raise their game for this this occasion. The challenge now is to raise this to the same level next week, where it's a 2-hour drive down to London in front of maybe 150 people rather than over 1,000 like there was today. That's the challenge, is whether we can raise our game for when it's not such a hyped up experience.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask. In some ways, you can understand why the players came out the traps like they did, because it was such a big game. What is there you can do that can help get that sort of a start against someone like London next week? Is there any effect you think you can have on your players?
Well, I think the thing is that we've got to stick to the same process, which is pointing out the things that we want them to stop doing, pointing out the things that we want them to start doing, and pointing out the things that we want them to keep doing, and just keep reinforcing and keep reiterating those points, because there's no two ways about it. We are improving. The thing is, though, all the other teams are going through that same process, so all the other teams are improving as well. So you can't look back and say, well, we were beaten today by more than we were 2 months ago, because Bradford have improved in that time as well, no doubt. So yeah, it's just a case of making sure that we're honest with ourselves in terms of what we need to do better, and honest with ourselves with what we can pat ourselves on the back with. And there was a lot of positives today. There's a lot of things that we did today defensively that we haven't been doing, and I think now it's fine tuning some things. We've come up against what's essentially a full-time team today, and we invested so much energy into that first half that in the second half we just didn't have an answer for what is a very fit, aggressive team in a 30-degree heat day as well. So I think all in all, we've got to be proud of what we've done, but again, it's just the scoreline's crept away from us. Anyone that wasn't here might think, oh, Bears have got smashed again, which we have done, but the performance was good.
Kieran Sherratt back from injury today, and he really did make a difference. I'm guessing you're pretty pleased with the contribution he made.
Yeah, he was excellent. It was a threat every time he carried the ball, and defensively he was strong. I think he was absolutely out on his feet after half an hour, and that's when we brought him off. And I think him coming off was one of the potential turning points when we just started to lose a grip of the arm wrestle a little bit. And then when we brought it back on, it was probably a little bit too late, maybe in hindsight. But obviously it's a long hot day, and we didn't want to use our substitutions too early in the second half. So yeah, there's it's great that he's back, and I thought it was at least in our sort of top 2 or 3 players today.
And just to finish, obviously London next week, and then Hemel back here the week after. What are your thoughts on those 2 games? Because if you can capture the spirit of today, it feels like you've got a really good chance of racking up a couple of wins there.
Yeah. I mean, we threw the game away against Skolars here. It was a game that we were absolutely in control of with 10 minutes to go, and we managed to lose it. So we've got a little bit of a revenge factor on that, and obviously taking into account our performance today, we've got to be confident. But at the same time, like I said earlier, the challenge for us is getting ourselves up and starting and playing the way that with the intensity that we did today, when there's a long journey and it's not as there's not as much energy in the stadium, and whether we can still get ourselves up and perform. I'm confident that we can do, and if we can get a result against London, that gives us even more confidence to get a result against Hemel, and then that gives us a little bit to work on going into the second half of the season.
Stuff. Well, Tom, enjoy the rest of the party atmosphere here, and I'll see you soon.
Will do. Thanks very much.
So, John, welcome to the Bear Necessities podcast. You've just seen your team overcome the Coventry Bears. Have you enjoyed your trip to Coventry?
We've enjoyed the trip to Coventry. We'll enjoy the trip home, but we didn't enjoy the first 40 minutes. I thought Coventry did really well. I thought they put us under a lot of pressure, and I didn't think we handled that pressure very well. So it's credit to them, but we did feel eventually, that it would take its toll in conditions like this, and thankfully we kept our composure and came home pretty strongly. But that first 40 was a winning 40, believe you me, so congratulations to the Bears.
And in terms of what you're going to be telling people back in Yorkshire, when you go back and people ask what was it like at Coventry, what was the club like, what are you going to be telling them?
Well, first of all, it's great that it's been a record crowd, I believe, isn't it? Yeah. 1,400 people, so that's first class. But the facilities are outstanding, and I like the idea that they're trying to develop a Midlands-based team, and there's a lot of young, good players here. And it's a bit of a shame, really, the RFL have taken the Midlands Academy away, because for me, when I've witnessed witnessed these facilities and the enthusiasm and the hard work that a lot of people are doing, it would have been ideal to have an academy here to try to give them a player pool to feed into from the Midlands, so it's very heartening to see what's happening here.
And with your Wales cap on, are you pleased with what you saw from the Welsh guys in the Bears lineup today?
I'll have to have a look at that, because obviously when I'm on the sideline here, it's all I'm looking at is the red, amber and black, so I'm looking at that. So, but when I review the game, obviously it'd be a lot easier to sit back in the armchair and have a good look and see how they did. But I know Zach's a good player who plays hooker. And I obviously know Paul Emanuele as well, who's a very clever player, and so they'll have done themselves a lot of good. But again, as I say, I'll look at it when I've got time in the armchair. And
just lastly, it's the Bears' 20th anniversary season, so I wondered if you had a birthday message for the Bears.
Well, happy birthday to you, and long may the hard work continue and the good work continue and the progress that you make it continue. So happy birthday.
John, thanks so much.
All the best.
Huge thanks to both head coaches for taking the time to join this little podcast. Craig, the Bears impressed John Kear and they left Tom Tsang feeling very proud. I know we've been talking about this pre-pushing record, but it was just a great day, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I mean, the only very, very slight disappointment, I think, was that the result did look more lopsided than it actually was. And Bradford are a class outfit, and they showed that. And when they needed to step up a gear, they did. I'm pretty sure they got a rocket at half-time off John Kear because they came out completely fired up in the second half. But for large parts of that first half, I couldn't have been more proud of the Bears players. They really give it a good go. And they'll actually be disappointed that they didn't go in more even at half-time. I think they... the amount of pressure the Bears had on the Bradford line, they probably should have scored more. They made Bradford make mistakes. Every time Bradford got the ball, they were being harried, they were being harassed. The Bears' defensive line went up quickly, only for a couple of breaks. Again, Bradford players showing their class. Then the Bears potentially could have gone in at half-time in the lead. And certainly the guys can take huge credit from that first half performance. And you could see that actually when they walked off the field. Both sets of fans applauded the Bears off the field for such a good performance in the first half. I was talking to people at half-time and, everyone was thrilled at the performance and hoping that they could, make a good start to the second half and give it a good go. It wasn't to be. One thing again, I was so proud as well that despite that blitz early on in the second half, the Bears sort of composed themselves again and give it another good go for another 10 minutes. Scored one, really, really unlucky not to get a second. And, they ran out of steam at the end. That was clear that, all the effort that they put in the earlier parts of the game in the blazing sunshine and the heat started to take its toll, and Bradford started finding more and more gaps. And, as I say, the scoreline looks like Bradford walked it, and in some ways they did based on their second half performance, but doesn't tell the full story at all.
No, not at all. And wasn't it good to see the Bears start a game well? Because usually if a team scores after 5 minutes at the Butts Park Arena, it's usually the visitors. That's certainly been the way this season. And the team looks so fired up. And you're right about John Kear. I was watching his post-match interview he did with Bulls TV, and he absolutely said that he gave his team a rollicking. He said that they knew exactly what he thought of that first half, and he said that was the first time since he's joined Bradford that he's had to really lay into them, which again is credit to the Bears, that no other team in League One has forced John Kear to give the hairdryer treatment to his team this season. So we've got to take credit, we've got to take heart from that.
They were superb, The Bears were just superb in the first half, and you can see on social media, there was lots of Bradford fans, lots of Bears fans, lots of people who've never been to the game before saying how proud they were of the Bears' performance, and lots of congratulations from the Bradford fans. I mean, they're used to going to, clubs like Coventry and having it easy and winning quite comfortably. And they did win comfortably in the end, but the Bears give them a good old scare in the first half, I'll tell you that. And John Kear wouldn't have given the hairdryer treatment if he wasn't concerned about the way the game might go.
No. I wanted to ask you. I know it's sort of a given that every Bears player stood up on Saturday and put in an incredible shift, but a word on Kieran Shearer. I know he didn't manage the full game because it was his first game back, ironically, since the last time we played Bradford. But you know that saying, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. You really noticed him returning on that left edge. He was sensational on Saturday for the minutes he was on the pitch.
His strength is just awesome, and defensively as well, he's brilliant. You know, he caused them no end of trouble on Saturday, and you know, once he gets fully fit, he'll be a massive plus. I mean, to the Bears. And yeah, he was out for such a long time. It's almost like you do forget how good a player he is. He's a genuinely class player, and one that is, you know, very comfortable at this level, and playing against the likes of Bradford Bulls and putting in a performance like that shows what a good player he is. You know, the return of Chris Barrett as well. Chris Barrett was superb on Saturday. You know, the amount of work he put in, considering he's probably still not 100% match fit. You know, he's just come back from a long layoff. But yeah, across the whole team, the effort was immense. The pack were just brilliant, keeping Bradford, you know, not letting them make yards down the middle, putting big hits in, working together in twos and threes, and then just when they had the ball in hand, taking it up. You know, the Bears. We've seen some performances this year where the Bears have made a lot of errors. There was one or two. They'll be disappointed. There was a couple of missed touches and things like that, which really shouldn't have happened. But ball in hand, the Bears really played in a composed way and did really well. You know, and they caused, you know, they scored a couple of tries. They could have actually scored more because they were causing problems to Bradford all the way through, really, when they had the ball in hand. And even right at the end, in the last 10 minutes, you know, Bradford ran away with it, but the Bears were still pushing for another score, which was real credit to them. And they could have just closed up shop and tried to keep the score down, but they wanted to keep going and give something back to the fans who turned out in such big numbers.
Well, you mentioned the fans, and I was going to ask you about that next. I mean, it was great to see so many Bears fans there and so many potential new fans there as well. But we can't not give huge credit to the Bulls fans who travelled down and made it such a carnival atmosphere. That they were terrific to have in Butts Park Arena on Saturday, weren't they? They made so much noise and so supportive of both teams. There was no arrogance about them. It was all just They were there for a great time, and I think they would have left Coventry pretty impressed, don't you?
Yeah, I spoke to a lot of Bradford fans, and I have to say I've never seen such friendly fans in the whole time that I've been watching rugby league, and certainly not so friendly fans on coming to an away ground. And they are the big club; they're the biggest club in the league. As you said, they could come with some arrogance. They could look down the end of their nose at Coventry and think, you know, what's this all about? But they came down. Everyone that I spoke to said they were massively impressed with what the Bears were doing, massively impressed with the facilities and the ground, and very impressed with the Bears' performance. And as you said, they stuck around at the end. They clapped off both teams. And, you know, as I said, I couldn't have expected any fans to be any friendlier. As I said, I had so many different conversations with people, and, you know, obviously they were very knowledgeable fans, and so many of them said, we'll definitely be back and watch the Bears again, whether we go up or not. We'll make a trip back down here, because they really enjoyed the day. I mean, at one point, it was just brilliant to see before kickoff. I think it was about 20 past 2, so 40 minutes before kickoff, the beer garden, which had been set up where the music was playing opposite the main stand, there probably was 200 people there, you know, listening to the music, drinking beer in the sunshine, eating food, having a laugh. Bulls and Bears fans talking to each other. There was a big group from Telford Raiders there as well. Mm-hmm. And then there was other clubs represented as well. I saw lots of different shirts there. So it really was a good really brilliant day. It was a bit of a carnival atmosphere before the game, and that to me was really special. And as I said, everyone that went there really enjoyed it. There was lots of new fans as well. I was talking to people who'd not been to the Bears before, and again they were saying we'll definitely be back. We've really enjoyed it. So all in a really successful day, and to see nearly 1,500 people turn up, there was a lot of that number were Bradford fans. I'd say at least half of that crowd was from Bradford, but there was a lot of people from the Coventry and the Midlands that came along to watch the game. A fantastic turnout, and it was a great day. I have to say special mention to the people who put on the music, and yourself included. That was really, really well received.
Oh, good.
And
it was fun to play in as well. We had a good time.
Yeah, all the bands were brilliant, and really well received. Alex Norman did a great set in the clubhouse afterwards. People singing along to that. So it was a really great day.
Yeah, well, perfect. I don't think there's any more we need to say about Saturday, really. But we will hear more from the day, starting right now. In fact, we're going to hear from a very happy Bears CEO later in the episode. But first, let's get the thoughts of the BBC's Rugby League correspondent Dave Woods, who travelled down to the Midlands on Saturday to be part of our big day. He was here to take in the game and to record lots of footage for the 5 Live Rugby League podcast, which has gone out, is already out as we record this. So it went out on Monday. It's got a very, very strong Bears flavour to it. We'll perhaps touch on that in just a second after we've heard our interview with Dave Woods. But anyway, so Dave Woods coming to Coventry sort of rounded off a circle, because long-time listeners might remember he was a guest on this podcast last autumn when I did a sort of extended interview with him. Last time I spoke to him, it was over the phone. And this time, I managed to chat to the man in person on the pitch after the game. Here he is. Here's Dave Woods. So, Dave, you were a guest on the podcast back in the off-season, and I sort of, a bit of a joke said, well, you should come to Coventry sometime. You're here. How have you enjoyed it?
Brilliant. And I'm really glad that you offered the invite, because otherwise I possibly wouldn't have come down. And I think we're all a bit guilty, those of us who watch Super League week in, week out, we're all a bit guilty of forgetting what else is going on, especially in League One, because there are so many great clubs like here and Newcastle, and even though West Wales are getting tated every week, the fact that they're still there and still trying to develop rugby league in Wales is something that should be applauded and supported. And likewise here, I've been really impressed today. Obviously a record crowd. Bradford obviously could contribute to that, but hopefully a lot of people will have come locally who might not have been before and really enjoyed the atmosphere and really enjoyed the game. And fair play to the Coventry lads, because they gave it to them, didn't they? First 40 minutes, they really gave it to them.
Well, I was going to say, I can't tell if this is just me being a giddy Bears fan and getting excited at the fact that we were beating the Bulls for half an hour and we're 16-6 at half time. I mean, as a neutral observer, do you felt like the Bears gave it a go?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of being a giddy bear as well. I think we should all be a giddy bear at least once in our life. But they did, genuinely. I mean, talking to John Kear, I know you have as well afterwards. He was genuinely, quite stirred by what had happened in that first half. And I was talking to somebody up in the corporates earlier and saying, we were beating Bradford Bulls for 20 minutes. And Bradford are in the League One at the moment, but in historic terms, in the iconic basis that Bradford exists, that's good. That's great, isn't it? It's fantastic. That's something to build on.
So what are you going to be telling your colleagues at BBC Sport when they ask about what the trip to Coventry was like? What are you going to be saying about the club?
I think they'll be mostly glad that I've been sent to Coventry, and apologies to locals for hearing. They're probably sick of that one. But yeah, I think telling them that there's not so much colleagues at the BBC, but we have a podcast as well, BBC, and our adventure here in Coventry today is very much a part of the podcast that's going out next week. Or last week, depending on when your podcast is going out. Catch up on the BBC website. Looking at what this club means, what the potential is here, why the game should get behind clubs like this. I think I understand and I get the idea that the big clubs in Super League are the clubs that drive the game. They're the clubs that attract the TV audiences, attract the TV contracts, and bring the big money in. But you've got to have clubs like this. Otherwise, those big clubs couldn't exist. And, we live in an age where things are changing so much. We can't just exist on the Northern Heartlands anymore, because even in the Northern Heartlands, there are little holes appearing, Wigan are supplying most of the England Rugby Union side at the moment. You're losing that gene pool, and here you've got a massive gene pool. How many great rugby league players have there been in the East Midlands, the West Midlands over the last 100 years that we've not seen because they've simply not had the opportunity to play the game? We've seen what's happened in London. We've seen how many really good players are playing in Super League now that came through because London Broncos existed, and to a lesser extent London Skolars. And I think we've got to hold on to clubs like this, because this is a big patch that can attract some major talent that can be very much a future for English Rugby League. We don't have Welsh. When you talk about in my heyday of Rugby League, you talk about that great Welsh team of '95, for example, in the World Cup. One of my greatest Rugby League memories was Wales against Samoa at the Vetch. And that Welsh team that day was populated almost entirely by ex-Rugby Union players. Jonathan Davis, John Devereux, John Batemans, Yestin Harris was a young player in that team. And you looked at that and thought, wow, this is great. This is absolutely fantastic. But that supply cut. The minute the Rugby Union went professional, that supply cut because there was no longer the attraction to come north. But it just shows that in all these big areas of industry and population, there are all these very talented players that need to be given the opportunity to play in Rugby League. And that's, for Wales, read the Midlands now, that we can. This is a great reservoir of talent that needs to be tapped. And you can only do that by playing Rugby League in this area and developing Rugby League in this area.
And just lastly, as you know, it's our 20th anniversary season, and I'm going to ask you a question I've been asking everyone on the podcast this year. Have you got a birthday message for the Bears?
Well, I hadn't grown up properly at 20, so the best years were ahead of me. So hopefully the best years are ahead of the Coventry Bears. It's been a long task, hasn't it? I think I was hearing before that one of the first training sessions was in an underpass because it was the only place they could find lighting. They had to do a bucket collection to actually get the money to buy the strips. And look at them here today, playing against the Bradford Bulls, which was the message that was being talked about earlier today. 20 years, it sounds like a long time. It's the blink of an eye, isn't it? And, wow, what could you be asking in 40 years' time for the Coventry Bears? Challenge Cups, Grand Finals, World Club titles, who knows? Right. Yeah.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for making the trip down to Coventry and safe travels back.
Thank you as well for the invite, because otherwise I want to come down, I want to discover this little gem in the Midlands.
So huge thanks to Dave Woods there, and do check out the BBC's Rugby League podcast this week for a quite amazing portrait of the Bears, and a real brilliant capturing of what happened on Saturday. Loads of great interviews. Dave Woods even interviewed me and let me feature on the podcast as well, which was and
you did really
bonus.
well, mate.
Thank you.
Brilliant, mate.
Thank you.
I have to say, I was going to just say everyone who got interviewed from the Bears were superb. Spoke really well. And equally, the interviews with staff from Bradford was brilliant, really insightful. Again, as you said earlier, you could expect a big club from Bradford to come down to the Bears and have opinions about what the Bears are like, what they might not necessarily support expansion clubs like the Bears and everything else, but they were so supportive and fully behind what everyone's trying to achieve at the Bears. It was really good to hear. And also it was really good to hear that Bradford really are behind expansion and keeping League One in the Championship as they are. And really good interviews on that podcast.
And it's also, it's massive for the Bears to get someone as influential in the sport as Dave Woods, to get him to the Butts Park Arena and to impress him. He was clearly impressed. You can tell that from the way he's produced that podcast episode this week. For the Bears to be impressing him and to almost have a champion there at BBC Sport now, because Dave Woods knows that there's good stuff happening at the Bears. That's massive for the club, isn't it? It can only be a good thing to have someone like that so impressed.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. And Dave Woods, his podcast is superb. He does a lot of great work for the BBC, and the way he's put that together is brilliant. And, it really comes across that he was impressed with the day and the atmosphere and everything else. And it's massive for the Bears. I mean, the whole thing about the Bears is building this brand, getting people down to the game. The Bears Alan Robinson himself said they want to be a sustainable club. They're a club that haven't got any debts. They want to build strong foundations and take it on from there. For the Bears really to progress up through the league, and they need to get people through the gate, and they get decent crowds for a club outside the heartlands, and a club which, being honest, loses more games than it wins. But games like Saturday, that will have a massive effect, and the likes of Dave Woods showing his support and putting on putting the Bears on a podcast like that really is massive for the club, and really appreciated, I'm sure, as well.
So Craig, when we get to the end of this season, and say in a couple of years, when we see the Bulls not only getting promoted back to the Championship, but let's face it, when we see them getting promoted back to Super League, what are your abiding memories going to be when you take stock and look back on this Battle of the Beasts?
I think the thing is, it was much more than the result. It was about the day, and this game has coincided with the 20th anniversary season, which we've said so many times now, but it feels like a real watershed moment. To me, it feels like the Bears have arrived. They are a club. They are a League One club. They are going to be taken seriously. They've shown that the potential is there. That was the biggest League One, albeit boosted by Bradford, but that was the biggest League One attendance of the weekend, and much higher attendance than a lot of Championship games as well. So it really shows that there is potential here in Coventry and in the Midlands for Rugby League. If the Bears continue to grow the brand and continue to build and start being able to produce more and more locally based players and get more money and a higher budget for playing staff, then I'm pretty certain that the crowds will continue to grow. And, there's a real opportunity here. There's a real opportunity to build a solid foundation in the Midlands for Rugby League. And it really felt like that on Saturday. It felt like, this is, the Bears announcing their arrival and hopefully here to stay for many years.
Yeah, great stuff. I couldn't agree more. Right, well, it's almost time for us to head off, but we do have a couple of quick bits of business to get through before we do. First of all, a bit of news for you. The Bears' home game against the West Wales Raiders that was called off because of snow, which seems a ridiculous thing to be saying as we're recording this in such stinking heat. But yes, back at the start of the season when the snow was disrupting the fixture list, meant we missed out on playing West Wales Raiders at home. That game is now going to be on Wednesday, the 25th of July at the Butts Park Arena with a 7:45 kickoff. So evening game should be a bit fun, should be a bit different as well. So look forward to that. Get that one in your diaries. And second, of course, much more pressing, this Saturday the Bears are off to the capital to face the London Skolars. Now Craig, there's no doubting after what we saw last Saturday, particularly that first half, there is no reason at all why the Bears can't go into this weekend's game with a huge amount of confidence, is there?
Yeah, and they really pushed Skolars close in the home game, and it was a day of disappointment actually, because I felt like the Bears should have won that game. Definitely. And certainly they controlled the game for the first 60 minutes and should have really been so far ahead that Skolars couldn't come back. But credit to Skolars that day, they put in a fighting performance. And so going into this game, it is one the Bears can win. They need to perform at the level they did on the first half against Bradford. You need to try and keep that level of performance for longer. They need to show their fitness and they need to work Skolars and use the ball well. Skolars are on a bit, they won last week against West Wales, but going into that they were on a really bad run of form. But saying that, they've put in some, on that bad run of form, they put in some very good performances where they pushed some top clubs very close. So they're definitely no walkovers, and they're probably slight favourites to win the game. But the Bears surely have got to look at that game and think there's an opportunity there. Just need to turn up on the day and put in a great performance. It's a real good opportunity.
They need to remember what worked well for them in the home game, which was that first 60 minutes. The Bears were not afraid to go wide and to run the ball and to move the ball quickly, and that was where they got the advantage over Skolars, because they are a more nimble team than the Skolars, if memory serves me correct. The Skolars are a very big, strong team, but perhaps not so mobile out on the edges. So if the Bears can match that intensity from the first half of last Saturday with the speed and the urgency that they had for the first 60 minutes last time they played the Skolars, then they've got a really good opportunity to score some points and get themselves in a position where hopefully they can hold on this time as well. Yeah,
I'm hopeful of a good performance. It would be sort of a real reward for the hard work that's gone in over the last few weeks. You know, that we talked about a bit of a turning point, the Oldham game at home, which was a bit of a disappointment. And since then, the Bears' performances, they haven't managed to pick up any wins, but the performances have definitely improved. And, you know, they're looking a more cohesive unit. You know, we got players like Chris Barrett and Kieran Sherritt coming back. You know, and we've had some dual reg players in as well. So going to be an exciting game, and, you know, hopefully the Bears can put in a performance and get the result.
Yeah, definitely. Right, well, I think that's where Craig and I will leave it this week. Huge thanks again to everyone who has been involved with the Battle of the Beasts in whatever way, whether it was just coming and watching and cheering the Bears on, or whether you were more involved in putting things on and making things happen on Saturday. It really means the world to everyone involved, and I know we've been big champions of it and we were involved with it, but, you know, it's been such a great day for the club.
Yeah, I mean, and just again, another thing that's just sprung to mind about Saturday was, before the game, you know, the fans were all mixing together. John Kear was just walking around the stadium, talking to people, saying hello, shaking hands, doing interviews. Dane Chisholm as well was practicing his kicking and got the Sky Tribe kids over to talk them through what he was doing. Just lots of little moments like that made it a great day. And, you know, while the result didn't go the Bears' way, they will have earned a lot of new fans on the weekend.
Definitely. Well, to finish this episode and to round off the Battle of the Beast, we wanted to show you just how much it means to the Bears, everything that happened on the weekend. So we're actually going to leave you this week with one last interview, and that interview is with a very happy and very proud Bears CEO. Here is Alan Robinson.
I couldn't be prouder. I couldn't have imagined that, 20 years ago that we'd be in this position now. We're 4 years into League One and we're hosting Bradford Bulls, and, we've given them a pretty good game for the majority of the game. I think a lot of people, we've surprised a lot of people. A lot of people have spoken to me and gone, we deserved more from the game actually, but, I think you got to look at it in the context of the fact that they're a full-time squad. And, the last couple of weeks, our guys have probably doubled up twice, really, with England universities and Wales universities. I couldn't be prouder of every volunteer, staff member, coach, player. I couldn't be more proud. We've turned a lot of heads today, and that's what we wanted to do. We've achieved that, and it can't get any better than that.
And what do you think this shows the rest of the sport in the UK about what the Coventry Bears are about and how they're doing things, how you're running the business, how we're developing players? What do you think? What do you hope the rest of the sport takes from today?
The fact that we've had just under 1,500 fans here at the Butts, to a game where a lot of people, a top of the league team against a team that's, towards the bottom of the table. But we've still brought people into the game. We've still brought people in from Coventry. Coventry's a sports mad city, and people have come and voted with their feet. I think I've spoken to a lot of people today, a lot of Cov City fans, a lot of Rugby Union fans, and people just couldn't believe it. We've the commitment from our players and what we've done today has turned a lot of heads, and I just hope that going forward for the rest of the season, people will take note of us and come and get involved and come down and watch more games, because we need it. We need that support. We need that investment. And yeah, couldn't be prouder.
And I was going to say be honest on this one, but you're never anything but honest. How much have you wanted to wishing you were pulling on a Bears shirt and being on the field today?
I thought back to 2004 today. A lot of people here, a lot of old boys here today. It's the last time I played in the stadium, a lot of people have come to me and said, well done, what we've achieved. Yeah, it's hard to envisage, but I would have given anything to be on there with the guys today. But everybody deserves it. All the guys that are on there have deserved it. We've got guys that are Midlands based, they're from Coventry, guys from the south. We've had a lot of naysayers recently say expansion doesn't work and why is Coventry getting money and things like that. If our return on investment isn't tenfold to what we've achieved today, then I don't know what is good for the sport. It's the greatest sport in the world, and I will always champion rugby league, and I think today we've achieved something special.